Listen to Robert live, weekdays and Saturday mornings from 10.
The Craft Beer Rising Festival is taking place this coming weekend up at the Old Truman Brewery, very kind of apt setting over in Brick Lane. And it's basically a celebration of something that didn't exist 20 years ago, I suppose, here in Britain, which is the craft beer revolution. And here to tell us more about it is Melissa Cole, award-winning beer writer, author and beer sommelier. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
I mean, first of all, you're all wrong. You're meant to be a bloke with a beard and a big jumper.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the blonde hair and the other bits give it away a bit, don't they? Yeah, no, I am, it's been a funny old, 15 years now since I decided to focus on beer. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. It's lovely that I've actually got some female company in the industry now, and I'm not standing around just going, okay, can we move on from this conversation, please, lads? Yeah, she's very pretty.
But you've been your timing was clearly very good. Because I guess when you started 15 years ago, there wasn't that many craft beers around, but since then it's blossomed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as they say with everything, it's all about luck and timing, really. I didn't get into it because I had some fantastic crystal ball. I got into it because I got very cross with people describing beers as hoppy and malty with a bitter finish, which was coming as no surprise to me, given that beer is made from hops and malt and generally has a bitter finish. Yeah. This wasn't wholly surprising, but I was getting different things. I was getting different tastes and flavours and honeys and breads and flowers and sort of sweeties, childhood sweeties and things like that. So that's what sort of made me really passionate about it. That, and I kind of like a pint.
Yeah, so do I. Probably a little early in the morning, but I don't mind. We haven't got a pint, but I've got a sip of a couple of beers here.
Yes.
When we talk about craft beers, does this need some defining now? Because so many things are calling themselves craft beers, and then you've got the big breweries buying up little breweries.
Yeah.
What do we mean by this?
Well, it's actually an Americanism. Like so much of the culture that comes over to the UK these days, we've kind of co-opted an Americanism. And they've got a very clearly defined market out there, which just stopped with prohibition, basically. And then the big guys were the only people in a position to come back to life, and they dominated the market up until about 30, 40 years ago. Then smaller breweries started opening up. They made interesting different beers from the relatively bland mass market commodity stuff. So they've had a very clear definition. We haven't. I mean, we've got actually 2 beers here today from perfect breweries which are actually perfect examples of how we can't have that in the UK. Is that we've got Fuller's. Yeah. So Fuller's have been going since 1845.
Yeah, they're not exactly started by two blokes with beards in Hackney Wick, are they?
No, and then exactly, they're not exactly whippersnappers. But then also you've got Meantime, which is probably one of the sort of the Grand Daddies in a way now, which seems ridiculous given that they're only about 15 years old. That actually started people really thinking about different tastes and flavours in beer and putting bit more of a story behind the beer and marketing better, and starting in Greenwich, and of course now they've been purchased by one of the bigger breweries. But it's but then you've got this whole new sort of bunch of guys and girls who have been really reinvigorated by the way the Americans have attacked big beer. But it's exactly the same way as that we've got great artisan bread makers and bakers and butchers and fishmongers and so on.
London has played a central role in this because, I mean, I guess London was one of the great brewing cities of the world, wasn't it? And we had hundreds and hundreds of breweries. Then they all kind of vanished, bar 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But now there's sort of loads of them cropping up again.
Yeah, I think everything's, they call them revolutions for a reason. It's cyclical. But I think that you'll see that I can't see for the next century, beer won't be an intrinsic part of London life. The great thing is that, of course, certainly with the East End regeneration with the Olympics, what happened was that lots of perfect little spaces became available for home brewers to take their passion to the next level. And that allowed them to open up in a very cost-effective area, in a very cost-effective space, and to a market who was very thirsty for their beer.
And prepared to pay a bit of a premium.
Well, I think what you've got to realise is actually that A, these guys don't have the purchasing power that the big breweries have, and also B, actually they're putting, well, certainly if you look at a commodity lager versus, for want of a better phrase, a craft beer, they're putting in anything up to 8 times the amount of ingredients. Plus, also you've got to bear in mind that the Chancellor takes a big old chunk, probably about 2/3 of that glass of beer, for their coffers.
All right, let's look at the two that you've brought in.
Yeah.
One's dark and one's light, is
One's
what I can
dark
say
and
from
one's light, yep.
first appearance.
So we'll start with the light one.
Yep.
So this is actually Times IPA 2000. So I've sort of had a bit of a dig in my personal cellar because I thought it'd be nice. I heard you were a bit of a beer fan. So
Well, I'm a beer fan, but I'm probably a heretic in that I like lagers. I like lighter beers. I like pale ales. I don't like big English warm soapy beer.
Okay.
That's just not my thing.
If you don't like cask beer, that's absolutely fine. But we are going to be taking your passport away from you. No. So this is one of the very most English of beers. This is an IPA. This is an India Pale Ale. So this is actually
that's lovely.
Re-fermented with champagne yeast in the bottle.
Really?
So it was actually a celebration beer for Meantime gaining their 2000th beer tap in London.
Right.
So it's a celebration beer. So this is their IPA. I love the sort of slightly really sort of preserved lemon, slightly banana-y note on it.
Yep, it's got all of those. If you hadn't have said those, I might not have been able to say it. But once you say it, I can taste it and smell it as well. It smells banana-y.
Yeah, and then you've got that lovely sort of bright lemony, limey sherbet thing going on at the end.
It's very zesty.
It is very zesty. It's not overly bitter. It's actually quite smooth.
But you see, what I don't like is beers that are overly sweet. Sometimes when you get stronger beers, they get that real kind of sweet, chocolatey intensity, and that's not for me.
Yeah, so
I like clear, crisp beers, and this is that.
I tend to be with you unless actually I'm having something that's quite sharp against them to eat. So
that's lovely.
That is good, isn't it?
Is that actually? Can people buy that, or is that?
Yeah, it's available in limited edition. It's from the Brewers Collection, so you'll have to hunt it down a bit. So it's the IPA 2000 from Meantime. There were only 1,200 bottles produced, so you'll have to have a good old look.
Oh well, I feel privileged to have sipped one this morning. That was lovely.
So the other beer that we've got is Fuller's Vintage Ale. Now this is actually 6 years old now. So Fuller's were the first people to really talk about properly and modern in inverted commas brewery to talk about aging beers and actually that it can be a very positive thing. So I find that for the first couple of years the brewers' vintages are great. And then after about the next 3 years, they kind of drop off, and this is just coming back up again.
Now, so what I'm smelling there, this is going to sound slightly odd, I'm smelling truffles.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's got a slightly mushroomy thing going on.
Yeah, mushroomy, truffly thing.
Yep, that'll be the oxidation process that's happening. In the same way that you get Madeira and Madeirification, that's exactly what's happening to this beer.
Now, this is sweeter, denser.
Yeah,
slightly more oleaginous. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
A little unctuous note
slightly.
To it. Yep.
It's less to my taste, but I can see why people would like it.
It's a little bit spiritus.
Yeah,
it's got sort of that slightly brandy note going on.
That's a good word.
Yeah,
it is. It has. You could imagine drinking a relatively small glass of that after dinner.
Joe, what this is fantastic with
what
cheese.
Is it?
Get a really good cheese board and this, and certainly with some of the great blues, certainly like a Stitchelton or something like that, and you've got that beautiful rounded sort of earthy note, picks up that mushroomy earthy note on the beer, but then you've got that lovely carbonation which cleanses your palate. So it's the kind of thing that we are going to be talking about Craft Beer Rising at the weekend. We're going to be doing lots of beer and food matching. I
guess one of the not problems, but one of the kind of hurdles you've got to get over with all of this is that still probably most of us think of a pint of beer or three as something you drink, standing in a pub at a bar next to your mates talking about the football or whatever it might be.
Oh, absolutely.
You're not sitting there savouring every sort of note on your tongue. You're getting a little bit drunk on a Friday night.
Oh, and let's make something absolutely clear. You will prize the Great British Pint out of my cold, dead hand. First and foremost, beer is a social lubricant. Yeah. That is what its job is. But that doesn't mean that actually in exactly the same way that you walk into a pub and say, oh, I'll just have a gin and tonic, and they rattle, just give me whatever. Or you say, I'll have a house white or a house rye. Yeah, exactly. You're either now choosing whether you want a Malbec or a Merlot, or whether you want an Albarino or a Pinot Grigio. I quite like Albarino as well, in fairness. And actually, you're now saying, actually, maybe at home or in a restaurant situation or in a pub that does very good food, you've now got such an array of taste and flavour. Everything from the most delicate sort of crystallised primrose all the way through to sort of Valorona chocolate and beers which have been aged in barrels, or beers that are actually now they're deliberately soured. You've got things which I can see your face. I knew your face was going to do that when I said that. It's the same stuff that makes yoghurt. Right. Ergo, given everything that everybody claims about wine being healthy, I'm claiming that sour beers with lactobacillus are definitely health drinks.
How do we know how many small crafty breweries there are in Britain these days? Has anyone counted?
In Britain, we're looking at upwards of 1,700.
Wow.
And in London, amazingly, we've got nearly 80.
80 just in London?
Just in London.
And how many are there going to be at the Old Truman Brewery for the Craft Beer Rising Festival?
There are going to be 150, so drink wisely.
You won't be able to try everything.
No, you won't be able to try everything, and I really do. I know, again, going back to the pint comment, I get that, but I really do encourage you to drink in thirds when you're at festivals, because that means you get to try lots and lots of things. And maybe start off with an absolute banker that you know, a beer that you know and love, but then do try and go around and sort of have a look. There's loads of great food stalls there, and we've got some cracking music.
How does it work? What's the sort of? Do you buy a ticket that gets you everything, or how does it work?
Be quick. There's only about 300 tickets out of about 8,000 left. So Friday evening's got some, Saturday evening's got some. I think Saturday daytime's got about 20, so you'd have to really motor for that. And then also you just pay in cash. So it's just 15 quid entry to come and see these 150 breweries in one place, and then you pay cash at the bar. No faffing around with tokens this year, which is fantastic.
What about ciders? Do they get a look in?
They do indeed. There's something called Lost in Cider Space, which is a terrible pun, which I
have terrible memories of being, when you're kind of 15 and you're sneaking into pubs and all of that. There used to be, at least in my memory serves me well, and I didn't have much memory after this, a place on the Harrow Road that only served cider. And it was I'm old, so I'm going back to the 1970s. And this was the sort of place where the regulars had no socks. It was one of those. And I went there one day, because everyone said you could get served in there, and had what was probably 2 pints of this stuff with bits floating in it. Yeah. And have never been able to drink cider again since, because it was just...
Sounds like when I was about
just
14.
Ended up sitting on the Harrow Road, kind of,
When I was about 14, there was a place in St Albans called the Boot, which was known as a spit and sawdust pub that would serve anybody. Yeah, it's much nicer these days, which is slightly disappointing, to be honest. But listen, there are now very, very different ciders. That stuff that you're talking about with lumps floating in it, that's what I call the agricultural ciders. Right. They're the ones that have got a lot of what's known as Brettanomyces in them, which is basically funk. It's this sort of, it smells like you've been licking the base of a barn that's about 1,000 years old. It can be a little much.
And some people like that.
And some people do like that. I'm not entirely sure they're possessed of taste buds, but some people do like it. But actually, I think the way that actually a lot of ciders are cleaned up, you've got people like Aspel who only use a champagne yeast in their ciders. You've got other guys who, for example, you've got Urban Orchards, who are the same guys who make who are London. They use sort of London apples, foraged apples from all over the place. You've got lots of different styles of cider these days. You don't have to kind of pour it out of a petrol can and pray that you don't go blind. So it's a very different place these days. And actually, my good friend and colleague Pete Brown will be there chatting about cider, and he's far more knowledgeable about it than I am.
Will you be talking?
I will be. I'm really excited, actually. I'm overseeing the Talks Theatre, so I've curated everything that's going on in there. And also, I'm really excited about the Ferment Forage Feast.
What's the Ferment Forage Feast?
So it's going to be during Saturday day. We've got somebody showing off how you can brew from better kits than a well-known chemist used to sell. Then we've got the Thirsty Gardeners who are doing foraged ingredients in full grain brewing. The big proper shiny kits. And then I'll be at the end of all of that showing people how you cook with beer, how to pair beer with food, and showing people some of the faux pas as well as the good stuff. So I'll be both poisoning and pleasing people in the same breath.
Where do people find all the information?
You find all the information on craftbeerrising.co.uk.
And that's taking place this coming weekend up at the Old Truman Brewery on Brick Lane. And we've been hearing about it from Melissa Cole. Melissa, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Listen to Robert live, weekdays and Saturday mornings from 10.